Well, good morning again, AP Gov students. It is beautiful Tuesday, April 14th a.m. Shortly after 10 o'clock, we're going to get started today. We're going to look at a few things. We're going to look at, before our time wraps up today, I want to look at the schedule for the week, kind of a shorter week. I want to look at the kind of some highlights from chapter 4, some things that you should be paying attention to. And then I want to preview the chapter 4 FRQ as well. So, Curtis in here. Let me start by sharing my screen with you, and hopefully you'll be able to see everything that I'm seeing. Wonderful. So let's see here. Ashlyn, can you just give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen? Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So as we kind of get started, we'll go through this here together. If you have questions, comments, throw it in the chat box. I'll get to it as quickly as I can and figure that out. So that's the schedule for today. Let's look at the schedule for this week. Okay, so the schedule for this week, guys, kind of follows this 1 to 2 chapters per week. So we're looking at this week because Congress is such a big chapter, giving Congress its own time, its own kind of place to review. If you recall, it's probably the lengthiest chapter we covered all year. It has the most information, and a lot of that obviously can be found in Article 1 of the Constitution. So all of that stuff, expressed powers, implied powers, all, committees, bills, grants, all that fun stuff that's all located in chapter 4. So, chat box up here. Oh, I was buffering. Thanks for the heads up. So again, chapter 4 is the lengthiest of all of our chapters. What I've put here is I've linked the Unit 2 page on Canvas. I've put links to the chapter 4 review notes. That's what this looks like. That's what we're going to go over here in a minute. I put the chapter 4 Congress notes up there, the ones from the textbook, and then those guided readings. I also linked the chapter 4 practice quiz. Chapter 4 practice quiz, just a good practice to kind of go through and get your brain refreshed on all of the stuff for chapter 4. So today, April 14th, we're obviously in our Zoom meeting right now, reviewing the schedule for the week, update on grading, chapter 4, and then I'll post the video here once we're done. So the schedule, obviously today, guys, we'll go over the chapter 4 notes. Then Wednesday or Thursday, depending on your block day, we will do those weekly kind of check-ins, the first 20 minutes of your block time. So period 3, that's starting right around 10:05. Period 5, 12:15, period 7 at 1:45. These again are optional, but I would really encourage you to have have some questions ready to go, whether they're things that didn't get answered today. If you would like to have some, specific feedback on a part or all of your FRQs, that would be a great time to do it. I know I've reached out to a few of you this morning already to say that you've requested a one-on-one and kind of be watching your email for an invite. It's going to take some time for me to schedule all those, so just kind of be patient with me. And if you don't hear from me by the end of the week, check in, but I'll definitely get to you. I'll shoot out an invite too. So that's Wednesday and Thursday. So the first 20 minutes of your time on block day, you can log in and get questions answered, but otherwise you are answering the practice FRQ, and I've linked that here. It's also on the calendar. Now, Friday is no school, and the same for Monday. You guys have no school. So the way I'm going to do it is either sometime Thursday afternoon or Friday morning. I will just record a video of the Zoom or of the FRQ, just some strategies to approach with it. You are not expected to be online, nor is anything. But if you want to use Friday as a work day, I'm going to use Friday as a work day. I'm going to be kind of piecing around there. I'm just going to straight up post a video for you about the FRQ. There is no expectation that you're logging in. On Monday, even though it is a no school day for you, I'm still going to plan and send out my schedule for the week on Monday of next week. My apologies for how late it got out yesterday. Oh my Lord, I don't know, I'm feeling like you guys, like I got slammed and 20 other things here at the house I'm trying to take care of. And so my apologies on the tardiness of my communication to you yesterday. So just before I move on, any questions on the schedule for the week so far? Anything that's sticking out to you that you have questions on? Okay. What I'd like to do, we reviewed the schedule, update on grading. Okay, so as to not blow up your parents' email box with yet another email from me, um, I want to make sure that I'm doing what other teachers are doing and following the rules when it comes to how I communicate what is missing, what isn't turned in without it negatively affecting you. I know I put in there, I said we're moving the incomplete to a quote unquote missing / exempt. So it still tells you that it's missing. Well, lo and behold, if you click exempt, all of a sudden it disappears. So people and parents and kids aren't actually seeing if you click that exempt. So in the fact that Mr. Fleet was right a week ago, I'm going to keep those just as incompletes. They do not negatively affect your score, but it's still going to show up. I can add comments of incomplete means I haven't seen it yet. If you are in period 3, you started to see, I'm using this morning, to go through and change those T's to numerical scores. So you're going to start to see scores go in there. Incompletes will remain. So I'll throw that into parent communication sometime next week. I just didn't want to blow them up with another email from me because they're probably sick of hearing from me. Any questions on the grading? So really the change is there is no change. We're going to continue doing incompletes. So you can see that they're there. Otherwise, if we do this missing exempt nonsense, it disappears. All right, nothing. Bueller, moving on. All right, let's go to. So if you're putting in grades for completes, yeah, Camille, it's not going to hurt your score. You'll see if you have questions once I start putting grades in. Like I said, I only got through my US history because I'm grinding them hard. You guys have already done a lot of the work, but US history has taken an inordinate amount of time. So I've gotten through my second period US history and my third period AP Gov. I'll get through 5, 7, 8 once this Zoom conference is over. But if you see anything for any reason that's like, hey, this totally hosed my grade, please just reach out to me. We can figure that part out. Good question. Thank you, Camille. All right. So let's go into chapter 4. Wait for that to load. So chapter 4, Congress. Boy, oh boy, am I just shocked how quickly or how short we've made some of these bullet points. But again, I would encourage, I would not necessarily say go back and read the entire chapter. I would go back, look at your one pagers. I would take that practice quiz just to kind of get your brain refreshed on those big ideas, because Congress, I believe, will have a big part in one or both FRQs, because everything has to do with policy making. So laws, and in the actual business of government. And Congress is involved in all of that. So I really think this is going to be a big part of it. So as a reminder, and I don't know if I move over here. As a reminder, Cory Gardner is our senator. He's currently up for re-election here in 2020 because of the coronavirus and all of the different things going on. Pretty much it looks like John Hickenlooper is going to be his Democratic. He's going to be running against Cory Gardner for that Senate seat here in 2020. Michael Bennet was elected in 2016, so he has about 2 more years on his term before he's up for re-election. Michael Bennet, the Democrat. And again, here's Colorado District 4. Ken Buck, re-elected in 2018, will always serves a 2-year term, as does all members of the House. He is a Republican serving Colorado District 4. Okay, so remember who draws these district lines? That comes from our gerrymandering cases. Okay, Baker versus Carr and Shaw versus Reno. So remember, going back to look at, you can't use race as a determining factor for how you're drawing boundary lines, and you have to redraw boundary lines about every 10 years. You can't wait 90 years to redraw those lines, and population needs to be as close as possible. So this is a perfect example of how to go back to some of those sheets in your binder. Make sure you have Baker Carr, Shaw versus Reno ready to go in case you were to get any question about gerrymandering or redistricting. Okay, so remember, the Congress is split into two houses, bicameral house. It was a highlight there in the Articles of Confederation, had a unicameral house. A bicameral house came from the Connecticut Compromise or the Great Compromise. Remember, you had big states supporting representation based on population. You had smaller states based in, supporting equitable or equal representation by the states. So now we have the Senate has 100 members, every state has two, and they serve a 6-year term. That means every 2 years, 1/3 of the Senate is up for re-election, supporting smaller states. The House of Representatives has 435 members. Each member serves a 2-year term. Everyone is up for re-election. The entire House is up for re-election every 2 years, and it is based on state population. So again, your parents are getting the census. I've already gotten like 6 notifications to fill out the census while we're hanging out here at home. But the census done every 10 years kind of looks at where population settles, and Colorado population has increased. Some East Coast states populations have decreased. So you're going to see Colorado probably after this census gaining at least 1 seat. I know I had said that we might gain 2, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say, depending on how long we're hanging out at home, some people might not be doing the census like they should. So it's really going to really ask everybody to fill out that census here this year for 2020. So remember, committee, most of a congressperson, a senator, a representative's work is done in committees. They are not always on the floor. They are usually in chambers working within committees. So why do we work in committees? Well, that first thing there, specialization. Okay, if they are now able to specialize in one particular or 2 particular areas of policy, whether this is Veterans Affairs, whether it's the armed forces, whether it's the environment, whether it's housing, urban development, whatever it might be, they now become a specialist in that particular area. And remember, committees are assigned by tenure or assigned by how many years they've been there. So the longer you're in office, the better committees you get on. If it's your first year, you're probably getting whatever's left over. Okay, committees also collect information. So they have those congressional hearings, they have congressional oversight. You've seen, in the past few months when it comes to things with Centers for Disease Control and the National Institute of Health, or when they are looking at Health and Human Services, they were kind of polling, where are we in our response? You could also look at some of the things in the impeachment trial, where they were collecting information prior to issuing the articles of impeachment. So again, they hold hearings, they collect information, and they are overseeing that particular area of policy, which gets then to writing policy, actually writing out the laws, sponsoring bills that are now up for debate. Remember, I'm just a bill. Okay, most bills die in committee. Okay, they never make it out of committee. Very rarely, a very small percentage of those bills make it out of committee. But a big part of being on that is writing policy. So bipartisanship, meaning are the Republicans and Democrats working together? McCain-Feingold bill, the Campaign Finance Reform Act, is a perfect example of a bipartisan bill. Okay, we had John McCain, Republican, Dianne Feingold, the Democrat, working together on campaign finance reform. That's bipartisanship. Then log rolling. Okay, again, log rolling, pork barrel spending. When we start to look at how those bills get inflated with more and more and more and more money, more and more and more issues that are added to them in order to gain support. So Article 1, again, Article 1 of the Constitution talks about the powers of Congress. It talks about the power for finance. Congress passes the budget. President can propose it. Congress actually passes it. Okay, coining money. Okay, collecting taxes. Again, that was a weakness under the Articles of Confederation, that the federal government had no way to enforce taxation. So under the Constitution, they created the federal government, thus Congress can collect and levy taxes. We also look at foreign relations. Again, it's that trick question that Congress is the only one that can issue formal declarations of war, but they also have power over approving ambassadors or diplomats to foreign countries. Okay. So again, a little bit more here. The House and the origination clause of collecting taxes, the Senate and their approval power. So it's not just ambassadors. You could also look at judges, federal judges, Supreme Court justices, that the Senate has approval power. Okay. There are limitations to what can be done in Congress, and a lot of that falls to your party leadership. Okay. Your majority and minority leaders, your whips, Speaker of the House in the House of Representatives. You have your President pro tempore in the Senate. The party leadership really does dictate what gets done, who gets on what committee. They determine who's on those committees is going to really determine what bills make it out of committee. There's a lot of information there that can play a role in what actually gets done. The process of getting things done, again, you have the bill, it's sponsored, maybe it makes it out of committee, then it goes to the floor for debate. Maybe if it passes there, then it goes on to the other to the other chamber in the Senate or the House. Maybe it makes it out there. If at any state or any point in the debate process, that bill can be killed. So as hokey and silly in fifth grade level as that "I'm just a bill" is, I would really I would reflect on that, because again, the process and how a bill becomes a law, that should be something you guys are very, very clear on. And if you're not, add that flow chart to your notes. And again, the threat of a veto. If the President Trump were to say anything you put in front of my desk in regards to X, Y, and Z, I'm going to veto, most of the time that just kills it without it actually ever making it out of the House. Having the veto power of the president can really limit the bills that make it out of Congress. Two things that are specific to each chamber. In the House has the Rules Committee. That's something, if the test is talking about specific to the House of Representatives, the Rules Committee and setting up the rules for how that's going to be debated, that's specific and only exists in the House. The filibuster, okay, endless debate, exists only in the Senate. Remember, cloture or 60 votes to end a filibuster. Neither party has a veto proof or has cloture already built in, but the filibuster, again, those are two things, filibuster and Rules Committee, they're specific to each House. So we talk about incumbency. Remember, incumbents are the ones that are running for re-election. In the House of Representatives, over 90% of incumbents won re-election in the House in 2018. So once you are elected, barring any sort of scandal or real lack of productivity because of name recognition, because of the ability to fundraise, the fact that House members, incumbents consistently win re-election, that kind of shows you the power of staying in office. Okay, why do they win so much? Okay, is it making that the credit claiming, they can go back and say, look at all the things I've done, look at all the bills I've been a part of, look at what I've been able to bring back to our district, to the people, to the voters? Is it name recognition? Is it, name recognition allows you to raise more money because you've been in there already, now you're able to win those? 88% of those who outspent their opponents won election in the House of 2018. So now you have two things, okay? 91% of incumbents won. And why did they win? Is it because they outspent their opponents? Yeah, it's easier to raise money. A couple of curveballs or things that might pop up that we should definitely just at least have addressed at one point or the other. In the House is the discharge petition. That's one of those things where it forces that bill out of committee into the floor of the House for a vote. So in the House, if there is a bill being debated and there's a danger that it wouldn't make it out of committee, they can force a discharge petition, and it forces that bill to come out of committee, and they have to debate it on the floor. So sometimes you can see this as a partisan ploy, or a way for one party or the other to kind of say, well, if you're going to kill this bill in committee, you're going to kill it on the floor of the House, and maybe it's going to get a little bit more publicity, and your voters are going to see, oh, hey, you've actually voted against this. It's a political move to kind of show, hey, you should be doing this. In the Senate is unanimous consent, the process allowing the Senate to ignore rules to pass something quickly if every senator agrees. So this was something that we started to see come up with the bailout plans here with COVID-19 and coronavirus. Some of those stimulus packages, they really wanted to be able to do through unanimous consent and say, like, listen, we can get this out of the Senate. The Senate is ready to go as long as every senator agrees. And that's where we started to see some debate there amongst the Senate, and again amongst the House of Representatives, as far as who's overseeing who gets money, how can you get money, that sort of thing. So those are two things. I know we didn't touch on them very deeply, but those could be two curveballs that might pop up in this kind of new FRQ and testing situation. Remember, the budget passed by Congress, the difference here between mandatory and discretionary spending, okay? Mandatory spending are those entitlements. They have to spend the money on it. It is already there. You don't have any choice. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, they've already been promised that money. It must be spent, thus the word mandatory. Everything else is discretionary spending. So remember, they have to get an appropriations bill, military spending, transportation, education, stimulus bills, i.e. this whole, all the checks that supposedly are going to be coming some ways to folks here in the next few weeks. All that is discretionary spending. So it's all the money that's left over after we've spent money on Medicare and Social Security. So if one of the questions comes up, why is it so difficult to to decrease the budget spending, or decrease the deficit, or decrease interest on national debt, or what are the limitations on the federal budget, you have to say, a huge chunk of that has already been spent. You can't change it. It's established by law. The Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, those entitlement programs, we have to spend that money. There's nothing in the law that says you have to spend X, Y, and Z on military budget. So going back, remember, we did the redistricting game. That's a fun one to go back if you're sitting in front of a computer, but also looking at the budget. Remember the piece of the pie, and if you're cutting one thing, or if you want to raise the budget spending in one area, you've got to cut it somewhere else. And most of the time that's going to come from these discretionary categories. So again, just a reminder that during our FRQ, our block time tomorrow and Thursday, please spend that time doing the argumentative essay. It's only one essay this week. Again, I will be available to check in with you guys during our 20-minute, weekly check-ins during your block time. If for whatever reason you can't join during that time, you can reach out to me. I could either invite you to another period, or we can just set up something individually. Friday is the teacher work day. I will post a video either Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, just kind of going over the FRQ in and of itself. While we're doing that, let's just look at that question real quick. Ruh-roh. Huh. Well, surprise, surprise, it's not in there. I thought it was. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. Let me go in and appreciate your patience. I'm not frozen. Still not frozen. Mr. Fleet doesn't know. Oh my goodness. It's like a comedy of errors. I'm really trying. I'm just clicking buttons. Okay, I found it. All right, we made it. All right, so let's go back. There we go. Whew. That was way more complicated than it needed to be. Here's the prompt for this week. Chapter 4 focuses on Congress. It's an argumentative essay structured in that 7 points. 1 point for the thesis, 3 points available for each piece of supporting evidence. Many members of the United States Congress have been repeatedly elected, and incumbents also often face little opposition with no real chance of being replaced. While the 22nd Amendment restricted the president to 2 4-year terms, member of the legislative branch may still be reelected to their office without limit. Develop an argument that takes a position on whether the Constitution should be amended to include term limits for the members of the House and Senate. At least one piece of evidence must be from the Constitution, Fed 10, Fed 51. So that's the prompt there. Here is what you are arguing. Should we be able to put a limit on how long someone can serve in Congress? So, what's the position? Yes, there should be term limits. No, there should not be term limits. And why, using those documents to choose from? You have to choose at least one from that. Morgan says yes. So perfect. You've already chosen the side. Now support it with evidence and give me a detailed thesis as to why. So I'm going to stop sharing there. Hey, bud. I'm talking to AP Gov. Okay. So that being said, guys, I showed you the prompt. You're basically looking at supporting term limits, yes or no. You can take time to do that during our times Wednesday and Thursday. If you have questions on last week's FRQ or this week's FRQ, I can address those there. Keep in mind, I'm going to be updating the grade book here today. We're going to be keeping on incompletes. Incomplete just means I haven't seen it yet. When I do, that incomplete will be changed then to a numerical score. Are there any questions, comments, concerns for the good of the order here before we wrap up our time? Which hat are you talking about, Josh? I do not have a Yankee hat in here. I got Rockies and the legend hat, a lot of Pittsburgh stuff. So, all right. So that being said, guys, I appreciate your time. We're going to keep it to about 30 minutes. Any of your peers, if they're wondering, I'll post this on YouTube and share the link out here once I get it uploaded. Otherwise, guys, I will check in with you tomorrow or Thursday. Look for that video discussing this on, No, Josh. I'll discuss it later. But yeah, if you have questions in the meantime, please reach out. Hey, the sun's coming out. Let's enjoy that. Be safe. Wash your hands. Hug your family. And we'll check in with each other again real soon. Okay. Take care, guys.